product managers need to be super commercially minded. And the reason I say that is because understanding the difference between a PE firm and a VC firm is fundamental to whether you'll be successful in that job if they're backed by one of those or not. Path A, PE firm, you're actually working for a financial institution ultimately, because that's the owner of the business. Path B, a VC firm, you're still working for a founder who's usually have some product or an engineering background. So that's quite different. Who's the boss here ultimately?
Hello and welcome to CPO Stories, where I speak to the UK's biggest and best executive product leaders, as well as some of the up-and-coming stars of the future. If that sounds up your street, don't forget to dive into the back catalogue on your favourite podcast app or on YouTube. And of course, follow, share, or drop me a comment or review. It all helps keep the lights on. And if you're a CPO or want to nominate your CPO to come on, do get in touch. I'd love to chat and find out more. On this episode, I'm delighted to welcome Nick Kenn. Nick's career has taken him to big names like Betfair, Redbubble, Chope and more before moving into interim and advisory product leadership roles, getting his hands dirty in a number of industries and working across PE and VC-backed organisations. These days, he's filling the interim CPO hot seat at Winmau, the world's leading darts brand and apparently the producer of the most advanced dartboard in the world. And I'm hoping he's going to have a lot to say about how product leaders can make sure they hit their targets. Nick, thanks for coming and welcome to the show.
Hi, Jason. Thanks ever so much for having me. Really looking forward to our chat today.
Absolutely. It's interesting because when you and I first chatted, and we should talk about this in a second, but you said you were currently working at Winmau. I'm like, that's a name that ever since I was a kid, you'd be getting the old Argos catalogues out and flicking through, and the number of dartboards that I've bought, over my, I'm terrible at darts, but number of dartboards I bought over that time, and Winmau was just the name. It was, you flip through it, just a page of Winmau. It's like, wow, that's such a cool company to work for. But I guess at the same time, many of my listeners may not have done any of that stuff. So it'd be kind of interesting to sort of understand from your perspective, you're in the hot seat there. What is it that the company does? I mean, we just talked about darts, so it's obviously dart related, but how would you describe sort of Winmau and the mission of the company and what you're working on at the moment?
Let me tell you a bit about it. So Winmau is a 100-year-old manufacturing business making dartboards, and it's the largest manufacturer of dartboards in the world. And
how many? Come on, how many a year?
More than 1 million dartboards a year and more than 2 million sets of darts.
A lot of treble 20s.
Believe it or not, 5% of the UK population play darts now, which is bigger than tennis. So it's booming. Darts is booming. It's in a boom time. And so Winmau supplies the dartboards for every major tournament in the world. If you turn on your TV and see a darts tournament, it will be a Winmau dartboard that you'll see. So we've been doing that for 100 years. And then about 18 months ago, Winmau was acquired by a private equity firm, Inflection, and that private equity firm asked me to join to figure out a digital product around darts. And that's where it gets really exciting for me personally, because I never expected to be working in darts. It's a fun sport that you sort of play as a kid and maybe occasionally in the pub. But here I am working in darts, and you would not believe how booming this industry is. And the product that I'm trying to build around darts is essentially a home version of Flight Club, if you've ever come across that, and your audience have seen that, which is a set of cameras that sit around a dartboard and detect where the dart lands, and then can send that information to an app or a website where you can do interesting things like play online against people wherever they are in the world, do training, collect stats and heat maps and all sorts of interesting things with that data. So that's what I've come in to build.
Now, that's obviously super interesting. And, Flight Club is one of them, again, I don't know if all my international listeners will know about it, but, again, that kind of, the social events and going out, and it's not just darts, obviously, these days, there's loads of different types of that type of thing for all the different sports. But, dart, there's a certain sort of satisfaction, the feeling the thunk against the board, right? But that's an interesting question because, one of the ways that you could do what you just said, effectively have at home, cool kind of connected darts and stuff, is you could just have some kind of VR thing, or you could have I don't know, just some kind of magnetic things that you throw at the board or stuff. But there's a very, I'm not even sure if it's the right word, but a tactile or kind of an auditory element of again that kind of thunk of the dart. So I'm assuming, based on what you've described, that kind of maintaining that really kind of realistic and somewhat traditional kind of feeling of playing darts is at the heart of everything.
Absolutely. And you literally hit the nail on the head there with the sound.
It's called bullseye.
because that's if you ever go to a darts event, it's that thunk because it hits the board that resonates around the auditorium, and that's absolutely part of the product that we're building. But some other things as well. I think if you've ever been into a pub where there's a dartboard, there's typically a chalkboard next to that dartboard where people keep track and they count down from 501 to 0. We have an online version of a chalkboard. We have celebrations when you hit a 180. We have all sorts of things that you get in the real world darts environment. So it's really exciting to be working on this product. It's pretty cool.
But obviously you talked a little bit about, like, you never thought you're going to work at a company like this. You never thought you'd work for, in this industry and stuff. Does that then imply that you've kind of got a bit of a darts background yourself? Like, are you quite handy with the arrows, or are you, did you have to kind of pick a lot of it up on the way in and sort of learn the industry?
Yeah, good question. So I have worked on a lot of sports before. I worked in sports betting for a long time. So I worked on many different sports and gaming as well, but never worked in darts. And I had to learn the ropes. I'd played darts as a kid. When I joined, I picked up a set. When I joined Winmau, I picked up a set, darts and dartboard, and I've been playing it kind of 2 or 3 times a week with my family as well. And I can now what's called check out, which means I can finish on a double, which is really quite hard to do and takes a lot of practice to get there. But I can actually do that now, so I'm proud of myself. It might not seem like an achievement for most, but you try and hit that double. It's quite a hard thing to do. So yeah, I'm proud of that. And my game will only get better when the product I'm building comes online, and it can help me improve my training as well. So that's exciting too.
Well, that's interesting, this kind of idea about training, because again, if I'm thinking about a lot of the apps that you see out there these days in, try and help you with sort of digital sports, again, which is kind of a little bit different to what you're talking about, because you're still very much focusing on that kind of the physical kind of element of things. But just this idea of, like, almost rather than just, throwing stuff at a board, like actually being able to kind of almost have missions and stuff for people. And it sounds weird to call it like gamification because it's already a game, but like just this idea that you can start to do proper training and kind of missions and stuff to get people good at stuff rather than just sort of flinging darts at a random board and hoping. So, like, I guess there is that kind of up leveling and sort of almost sort of a trainer type thing going on as well, right?
Exactly. I think you're onto the right track there. So most sports have an app, have a website, have some sort of training facility. There's Strava for running and Peloton for cycling. There's Carl for skiing. There's a swimming one. That you name it. There's a TrackMan for golf. But darts hasn't really got that yet. So it's rare actually that you get to build not only a product but shape a whole industry, a digital product, and shape the whole industry at the same time. But gamification, rewards, streaks, practicing, trophies, badges, all of those things that you would have seen in other products, the Duolingos and Stravas, absolutely we expect to be putting into our product over time. So yeah, you're absolutely on the right track. And the audience, I mean, this is an important fact actually, that 56% of dart players are under 30, which I was shocked by. And it was 12% before COVID. So darts is now a young person's sport, and that percentage is growing. And so those people are used to playing Fortnite, Rocket League, League of Legends, video games, and getting trophies, reward streaks. So that's absolutely the product that we're trying to build around that expectation.
But it's interesting though, because of course, there is going to be what I might somewhat unfairly name kind of almost like a traditionalist element, I assume, of darts as well. Like, not everyone's under 30, right? There's going to be people that are kind of used to doing it the old-fashioned way. And of course, the company itself's got this kind of long legacy, like you say, 100 years old, and like it's almost like a kind of a brand and a feeling and a kind of some emotions, I guess, that have been kind of created and crafted over that time as well. So, is there, from a company perspective, almost like a delicate balance? Like, you want to do all this cool new stuff and obviously capitalize, but at the same time, keeping enough of what makes Winmau, and kind of keeping that traditional background as well, so that you're not just not annoying, let's say, older people, but at the same time, you're kind of staying true to the heritage of the brand.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really hard to do that, right? Because we're trying to build a product that caters for people who are serious darts players and can hit a 180, and people who are picking up the darts for the first time and can not hit the board, right? And it will be used by both of those sets, because we have a huge audience and people watching on TV, and they'll get our product when we start to advertise it, and it could be anyone on that spectrum, right? So we have to cater for all of those types of people. So an onboarding journey and enabling people to kind of choose their path will be a really important part of that. I think another angle to your question is around how do you kind of build this digital product inside a traditional manufacturing company? And the answer to that is it's not easy, right? So when I joined a year ago, there wasn't a single person in the organization who understood most of the words coming out of my mouth. And that's quite hard. That's quite hard. And over time, I've had to help kind of explain what it is that we need to do around digital and kind of dial down the jargon around kind of product and digital. At the same time, I'm an outsider in this organization. It's actually me that's the outsider, and everyone else has been there a long time. It's a family-run business for generations, right? So
Yep.
I'm cognizant of that, and so not forcing this new world onto them. And it's a delicate balance, and we both have to kind of give a bit to kind of meet in the middle of this is what we're doing, and explaining it in language that works for both parties, and just keeping each other in check, I suppose, because we are a 100-year-old heritage brand that stands for darts and professionalism. So we have to be super careful. We're not building something that takes us off down a Mickey Mouse avenue in terms of products that could be super gamey and kind of too fun and not serious enough. It has to
Yep.
be quite fun, but it also has to like score the game of darts, and you're here to play. A lot of people are here to play professionally, even so the pros
Yep.
will use this product as well. So how do we do that? We have to be super careful and kind of staying in check with the rest of the organization. And it's a hard thing to do. I haven't worked in a manufacturing business quite like this before. I come from 25 years of digital businesses. So this was a new learning experience for me.
Oh, another one for the portfolio. But you talked a little bit about obviously the digital stuff and kind of let's not necessarily call it tension, but definitely the kind of there's potential, I guess, for tension between kind of the old world and the new. But of course, a big part of the new world is AI, and that's something that everyone's talking about at the moment. Whether using it to actually help you internally to build stuff and to kind of make things more efficient, reduce costs, or kind of give you new capabilities. But also, I guess, just AI within the products themselves. And again, if I sit there thinking of flinging darts at a dartboard, I know you've just talked about the cameras and the cool stuff that you're building, but it kind of feels like that's still very human, like actually throwing stuff at a dartboard and scoring and, playing it with your mates and stuff. I'm sure you could do it with computer trained and stuff as well now. But just there is this question about like, and talking a little bit about maybe the seriousness of some of your customers as well. Like, what is the appetite for, like LLMs and generative AI within that space? Like, is it something that's kind of playing a big part in your product decisioning and the stuff that you're putting out, or is it sort of not really?
Yeah, well, I mean, refer to my previous answer around kind of digital and manufacturing businesses. So there wasn't a lot of knowledge around AI in the business. It's now it's now using AI in a few kind of operational areas. So it's kind of growing as you'd expect, but it's still pretty nascent. But in terms of the product that I'm building, absolutely, and the team I'm building around this digital product, we already have an MVP in market, and we actually have the world's first AI referee in any home-based sport, in any home, actually, probably environment. So an AI referee that adjudicates if you're playing against someone online and you say you got a treble 20 and they're like, actually, no, I didn't. You can correct the score, and then we can call in the AI referee to adjudicate between those, look at the camera angles and say, actually, it was or it wasn't. So that is a world first that we're using AI for. So a lot of computer vision is obviously how we're doing the detection of
Yep.
the darts, and then we can layer over an AI referee to kind of really look into those images. So that's really exciting. And as we move forward, there'll be other applications of AI. I'm sure we'll look at how to personalize kind of training regimes and so on around your performance and the stats that we've collected on your performance.
Yeah, I was going to say, because obviously these days when everyone's talking about AI, they are talking about sort of LLMs and, as I said, it's sort of the generative stuff, but it almost feels like you're getting the most bang for your buck there, not out of any of that kind of new buzzy stuff, but again, the kind of the computer vision stuff that we were probably all working on 10, 15 years ago, which again has definitely come on since then, but like almost moving beyond just the sort of, oh yeah, let's put agents in and stuff like that, but actually, using the right tools for the job, which I think is something that maybe a lot of people are losing sight of at the moment. They're sort of sitting there just saying, oh yeah, we just got to cram all this stuff in. But actually, if you can just put some cool algorithms, looking at some images that are coming back and use that to deliver value, then that's actually a lot more beneficial for your customers, right?
Absolutely, and that's how I see AI at the moment. We're very I'm very pragmatic about how I do things, and we're using it for the things that we need at the moment, and not using it for things that we don't need at the moment. As in, we are using it to code, and we are using it for research, and we are using it for a few other things, and the AI referee. But we could be experimenting in 100 different areas at the moment. We actually don't have time to do that right now, because we have a really kind of focused approach to launching this product, and any distraction from that is not a good idea right now. So I'm keeping the team super focused on where we're going, and not pulling in too many new shiny things at this point in time.
Well, whoever knew that focus was going to be the thing that product people would be pushing for. But let's talk about product then. So you obviously interim CPO, you have a team there, I assume. So let's dig into a little bit about how that works. So you've got a team there. How big's the team? Like, how have you set it up? Like, what's the kind of the layout and topology of that team? All those kind of numbers.
Yeah, so I joined a year ago, and it was just me. I was the only digital person, so I've had to build a team.
So you're the most senior and the most junior person.
Well, exactly. So it was a long time. It was just me, and actually I had a choice to build or buy in this scenario. Do I build this software from scratch, or do I buy someone who's already doing some of this? I chose to buy, actually, and so I acquired a small company.
Oh, controversial.
Yeah, so I chose to buy a business who are already doing some of this. A small business with four part-time employees doing this on the side, and they had solved a lot of the problems that I had to solve already, and so it accelerated our path. And then I've built a team around that. So I now have a team of 12 people, 8 engineers, product manager, product designer, a couple of other people. And so it's a relatively small team. So in terms of team topology, not really at that stage yet where we have multiple squads. And this is quite unusual for me, because I usually come into a company that has sort of 3 to 10 squads is typically the sweet spot. And then it's about organizing those around whatever the right model is, whether it's the user journey or kind of tech stack or whatever it happens to be. But here we have one team at the moment, and we're focused on delivering a new user experience around this darts product as fast as possible, and connecting it up with hardware. And hardware has a long lead time, so we have the software has to follow the hardware. So we've got a hard deadline, really, which is very unusual for software people, because the hardware is going to be produced many units and takes a long time to manufacture and ship and get in stores and so on. So we have to line up to that deadline. And so hence the focus. It's all about delivering what we need to deliver by the time the hardware is ready or being produced. So that's how we are organized today. It's really focused on delivery. After this, then we'll likely reorganize the team probably around pieces of the user journey. We'll have a web and an app experience over time. So I'll look at the team topologies at that point. But yeah, typically I organize teams around stages of user journey.
Yeah, kind of classic team topology, 101, right? But it's interesting, because I was going to ask you about the kind of the digital versus physical, or as we might call it, manufacturing angle, and like whether you're responsible for all of that stuff. Now, from what you've just said, sounds like not, but there is obviously that, as you've described, almost a kind of such a tight link between the two, and to some extent one has to follow the other. So I'm assuming that that manufacturing side of things is still run by the people that were already running it, and you've had to kind of slipstream into that. I guess really the question is, how do you get that kind of traditional manufacturing mindset and the product mindset to gel together? Like, how do you hand off between the two? How do you sync up? How do you make sure that both sides have got their voice and that no one side is kind of just, doing everything one way, and that there's kind of good collaboration and, I guess, alignment between the two sides.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate enough that I've actually managed to bring in someone who's a kind of an expert at connected devices to project manage the hardware piece of this. And so syncing up the hardware and software has actually been easier than maybe you would think. But again, we're kind of fairly early stages of this. And so the rubber probably hasn't hit the road yet in terms of things that can go wrong down the track, manufacturing lead times and sourcing components and so on, and then kind of installing software and hardware. There's a lot of things yet to complete. So I'm expecting a few speed bumps along the way. But yeah, I think having Winmau as a whole adopt a digital product and kind of education around the business, it has been tough. It's been really tough, and for both parties, as I said before. But it's about meeting regularly. It's about talking about progress updates. It's about being available to answer questions, because the questions coming back from the traditional part of the business are, when are you getting this thing? Can we have a look at how it's looking? How many units are we going to sell? How many downloads are we going to get? And so just keeping the rest of the organization across the current plans. And this is not, again, rocket science or difficult stuff. Everyone would expect to do this, but it's just about keeping people informed. So regular syncs, sharing documents, just being proactive around that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, bringing additional sort of expertise in is obviously always a smart move in that sort of situation. But I also think that it's an interesting question. And again, you've talked a lot around kind of like the history and the kind of the traditions behind the company. And so I'm sure you've got some very passionate people within the organization that are super expert at darts and everything to do with darts. And then it kind of brings to mind this kind of general debate around like whether product people should be industry experts or sort of subject matter experts, or whether they should be product management experts and they can kind of come in and they can pick the industry up. Now, I know that from what you've just described, it's kind of early in that journey, but like, how do you see that progressing? Like, do you think that you're going to be building a bunch of product managers out of darts enthusiasts, or a bunch of darts enthusiasts out of product managers?
Yeah, I mean, again, a good question. What I'm lucky enough to have done so far is find product managers and product designers and actually engineers who have an interest in darts. And I think that really helps. One of the things I've learned in my career is that I'm really passionate about consumer products, and that is because I can touch and feel and use those products quite easily. And whenever I've worked on B2B products, it becomes a lot harder for me to really feel the pains of the users if I'm not a natural user of that product, because I'm not a business or have a need for that product. So again, this is not rocket science, but just making sure that you have a passion for that product really, really does help, and you'll find insights, and people will be able to go that extra mile if they are passionate about it. So I am looking for product managers, engineers, and designers who have an interest in darts. And yeah, that's my stance at the moment. And I think it's really hard if you come in and you don't have an interest in darts, because it's quite a niche, or you think you're not going to have long term have an interest in darts. It is a niche, and you do need to feel the passion. And the example you said earlier about the sounds that are connected around darts and the kind of tactile nature of it, all of those things, you have to live and breathe it to build a world-class product. And I expect my team to be living and breathing it, so they have to have a passion around it.
Yeah, and again, that kind of tricky balance, I guess, because if you look at it on the other side, you might sit there and say that someone that does have, or people that do have that passion for it, maybe they kind of constrain their thinking a little bit, because they know enough about that world to kind of know how things are done. And, maybe they wouldn't make the big, bold moves that, maybe someone that came from outside, got some different ideas, would maybe try and do. Now, whether or not they would work or not, that's a whole different question. But I guess that's really the kind of the follow-up there, is whether you think that it's possible to bring in subject matter experts and people that are passionate about space, but kind of still encourage that divergent thinking so that they're not just kind of just reinventing the same wheel again and again, but they're actually able to kind of make step changes when it comes to it.
Yeah, and actually, I answer this in a slightly different way, that I think it's really important for product teams to be looking at not only their competitors, but parallel industry or other industries to source inspiration. For example, I use Revolut Bank. I think they've got one of the best user experiences around banking apps. I hope to bring some of the look and feel or kind of features of user experience of that into our darts experience. I hope to do that. Um, and my product manager and designer and engineers are kind of equally looking at outside inspiration. But competitor intelligence is a really important and undervalued piece of the product stack. And it's something I'm super passionate about. I actually built a product around it called Outfox a few years ago that went off and scraped data on your competitors, pulled it into a dashboard so you can do interesting things with that. And I built that product because in every company I'd worked at up until that point, product managers hadn't spent enough time looking at their competitors. And that is, I'll be explicit here, that's not to copy them, it's to differentiate from them. You cannot build a differentiated product if you don't know what you're differentiating from. So I fully expect my teams going forward to be looking at competitors to differentiate from them, and also looking at outside reference points so that they can get inspiration from them. These days, it's much easier to do all of that through AI, and I definitely wouldn't have built that product if I was starting now. But it's given me an appreciation of how you can really differentiate if you spend some time looking at and talking about what's happening in your market and external markets.
No, absolutely. And I think, it's that kind of old cliche. I don't know if it's actually an actual phrase, but, like, be really conscious of your competitors or your competition, but don't copy them. But you do need to be aware of them. So, because, on the other hand, and, as I say, if you have been active in this space, you'll, know all this stuff better than I do. But like, there's just this idea of like, well, it can be really tempting. And I've seen it myself in a bunch of different companies where it's like, oh, they've done this, so we got to do it. They've done this, so we got to do it. Or even with some industries where it's almost like every single company within an industry, they have like a checklist on their website of all the features that they have. And sometimes even compared with all of their competitors. So you could literally sort of just run your finger across and say, oh yeah, they've all got the same things. It's like you say, like differentiation is important. And we all know that our competitors are building stuff that maybe ain't getting used, or that is costing them too much to serve, or that didn't really make the impact that it could have done. And they're looking at all of our stuff and they're thinking much the same thing as well, right? And they're kind of, they've got green eyes and jealousy over the things that we're building, but at the same time, they don't know what of our stuff is working or not as well. So kind of this weird dance of people that don't quite know all of the details, just trying to work out what's going on, and sort of just getting jealous when they see something that looks cool on a website.
Absolutely. And maybe just to kind of close off this one, the user experience I hope to build around this product here at Winmau, I expect it to be the best user experience in darts, but that's not good enough. I expect people from parallel industries to be looking at my app and say, wow, we'll take some of this and move it into wherever it's a banking app, as I said, or a different sport or a different parallel industry. That's what I'm going for here. So that's the level I expect, and that's how I encourage my teams to think. We don't just want to be the best in darts. We want to be the poster child for how this can manifest in any industry.
Big aims, and again, hopefully hit the target. But how do you see then? I mean, again, you're kind of still building out product and sort of expanding product as this journey continues. So maybe not 100% there yet, but like, how do you see, certainly within the context that you're in at the moment, like, how do you see product management ideally working? You talked, for example, about, competitive awareness and such, which is a part of it. But, there's all these books behind me, and probably some books somewhere out of shot where you are as well, of like the best way to do product, and, like the ways that you should do it, the approaches, the frameworks, the methodologies, and all of the, the empowerment that teams need to have. Do you think that that's important within your context, or do we talked about, for example, passion for darts. We talked about the intersection between digital product and sort of the manufacturing side of the business. Do you think it's like you're basically going to be like one of those books at some point, or do you think there's always going to be some kind of contextual differences within your organization?
No, absolutely not. So I've read all the same books, I'm sure you have, and watched the same videos and listened to the same podcasts. So we all know all the frameworks that are standard frameworks. And I think the skill for the product leaders is really to kind of pick and choose and combine or reject frameworks to actually find out what's size or appropriate for that company at that particular stage. And the example now, the company I'm in at the stage it's at, most of those frameworks are not suitable for us, right? Most of them, because we're in a very specific situation. And so we can pick and choose from some of them, but most of those frameworks are not suitable for us. So we have to create, combine, change, make our own path. I think that's really important for product managers to understand that just kind of borrowing the standard framework is not the solve. In 9 out of 10 times, you have to adapt it for the company that you're in. And I have a saying when I'm hiring product people, I look for people who have both book smarts and street smarts. And what I mean by that is that they've read all the books, so they know all the frameworks. So they've worked in a company that's taught them the best practices about how to do product or whatever the thing is, run a meeting, write a product requirements document, whatever it is. So they can do all that, but they've also worked or at least experienced or done their own startup where they've had to figure out stuff without all the support and money and backing. And they've just had to carve a path through to find the best result for them. And the winning combination for product managers that I've hired and over many years, hiring many, probably hundreds by this point, is those two things combined. They've done some formal training, product company, they've done a startup or worked in a startup environment and had scars from both of those, and then they can pick and choose and combine and contrast. And those people are a lot more adaptable and successful in my experience, in at least the companies I tend to work in, which is scale up product companies.
Yeah, it's almost, like you sort of said, this kind of school of hard knocks and, knowing what to use and what to throw away and, just making the best of the situation that's in front of you, using the principles that you can, but not getting too wedded to things that maybe don't work and, not being too stressed about the fact that they don't. But, it's hard because we're being told by so many people that there's a right way to do things. So, I guess, we just need people to listen to podcasts like this and you never know. Let's talk about you. So you're the interim CPO there. And like you say, you were brought in, I think, by the PE firm when they went through the acquisition. And these days, when people think about sort of interim CPOs, they're probably thinking of fractional, that's the new buzzword. And it's certainly something that I dabble in. And I know you have as well. So that is a very kind of popular model, but you're not fractional at the moment, right? Like you're actually there. I think you're there 4 days a week at the moment. Is that right? So you're pretty much full time. You've been there solid for a year. I don't know how long you're going to be there for, and I'm not expecting you to tell me if it's sensitive, but how are you sort of seeing, I guess, kind of the difference between the interim approach of kind of just being the person there just for a period of time versus this, very fashionable and very popular on social media fractional thing that I know you've also done?
Yeah, well, I mean, to answer your question about how long, I certainly want to be here and I expect to be here and will be here through the launch of this product. So that's the first part. And it's not ready yet.
Got to see your baby get out the door, right?
Exactly, absolutely. But in terms of interim and fractional, they kind of do get melded into the same conversation quite often. Actually, you've probably written, or you have written the definitive article on that, which you posted about a year ago. And I certainly refer people to that quite a lot. So I'd encourage listeners, watch it, as to read that article. Maybe you post a link to it because it's very, very helpful. But so what I'm doing at Winmau now, it is an interim commitment, and it's 4 days a week. And that means I actually do have obviously a day a week to do other things. So you could say that's also fractional. And in that other day, I do some coaching, product managers and other bits and pieces. But the main difference with interim is you tend to have a bigger time commitment to a company. And to be honest, it's usually full-time. It's quite unusual that it's a bit less than full-time. And it's usually for quite a long period of time until such time as they've hired a permanent person for that job. Whereas a fractional, you're quite often brought in to advise or consult or handhold on a very kind of specific remit. And typically that remit, in my experience, has been help us create a product strategy, help us build a team, or help us set up some best practices, whether that be tooling, metrics, processes in the team. And it's usually one of those three, or all three of those things, but usually sequence and not usually at the same time because they're each quite specific things. And fractional tends to focus on, one or two of those things. And an interim is you're doing the CPO gig, you're doing the gig, but it's going to come to an end at a specific time, usually when a permanent person has been hired, which in an executive role, those roles take kind of 6 months, usually, or more to fill, right? 6 to 12 months, typical cycle. So that's the main difference. And I think with that means there's an expectation and a reality that you get a lot deeper into the organization. You build stronger relationships because you're sitting in exec team meetings, which you might not do as a fractional person. So you're getting involved in a marketing or a sales or a finance conversation as much as you are a product conversation because you're on the exec team. And another example here is, so I ran an M&A process, and I ran that process because there wasn't anyone else who was able to do that in the business. And so I ran that process, which I wouldn't have done as a kind of pure fractional part-time person, but because it required a hell of a lot of time, actually way more than 5 days a week to do that, pretty much single-handedly. So it was, that's a big difference with interim. You kind of get a lot more invested in it and you build stronger relationships. And actually you become a lot more attached to the business that you're working on. Whereas if you're working on 3 or 4 fractional gigs, doing a day on each of them, it's hard to become too attached to one because an hour later you're on a call with the next company. So that's the reality.
But it is interesting though, because one of the things that I've found with fractional work is that you to some extent can be seen as a bit of an outsider, right? Like people know that you're going to be there for whatever, a couple of days a week. They know that you're time limited probably. They know you've got a certain remit that you're going to work on, and therefore that you're not really part of the, not going to be part of the furniture. And you're very much almost, you to your point around kind of getting attached. I think I would say I still get kind of attached. I like working with the people and stuff. But you're necessarily, just due to the time that you're working, you're not quite the same. Whereas with interim, like you say, 4 out of 5 days, but it's still pretty much, getting close to full time. But you are still interim. People know that you're interim, right? So it kind of makes you wonder whether there's still that some level of outsideriness to being an interim, even if it's basically on a full-time basis, where people, like you say, yes, they want to make or have good relationships with you. Yes, you're going to get involved in a lot of stuff. Yes, you're going to be there pretty much for the long term. You're kind of working as if you were there forever, but there's just probably an expiration date that would be potentially sooner than you would have if you were just completely full-time or permanent. But do you feel that there is that kind of still slightly outsideriness, or do you think that given the kind of the characteristics you talked about, that sort of interim role is pretty much just the same as just any other job that you have at the company?
Yeah, I mean, I think the former is true, actually. And I think if I take myself as an example, if I'm looking at other interim people, and there are other interim people in the company and other companies that I've worked at, I quite often catch myself thinking, maybe I won't raise this topic with this person now. I'll wait till the permanent person gets here because then that's the sort of final answer and definitive direction for this thing. So it's inevitable that people are thinking about that, like that about me right now. It's inevitable. So I kind of expect that to be true. And I think then there's a sense of kind of, you have to be have a higher level of resilience to be able to kind of still carve a path and get the things done. Because ultimately, the reason you're being appointed as an interim is actually to deliver a thing, and it isn't actually to build really strong relationships and kind of get on super well with everyone in the org, which you should do as a human being. But it's about you're being brought in because there's a thing that needs to be done in this period of time. So you're in here to do it, and just keeping kind of laser focus on actually that's what I'm here to do and what I'm here to do. And this is, in this case, is build this product and launch this product. So I'm super focused on doing that. And I'm aware that at some point this will come to an end, but I want to leave here having known that I have launched a world-class product and I'm super proud of, and there's a team in place who can take this on. And maybe it's me hiring my successor, or maybe it's not, they hire around me. Either way is fine. But I want to leave with my head held high that I've actually delivered the thing that I came here to do, which is not build great relationships around the business. It's deliver this product so that the business has more customers, have a better experience and a higher valuation.
Every dart that hits the dartboard will have your name on it. But it's an interesting thing around goals as well. And this is something you and I spoke about before we started recording, because of course this isn't your first interim gig. You've done a bunch of different companies. And you've also done that across both sort of PE-backed companies like where you are at the moment, and also VC-backed companies as well. There's kind of a bit of, I don't know, chatter, I guess you'd call it, in the kind of the product community about some of the potentially differences between the types of goals and, like what success looks like in both of those types of environments, right? Because, there's a very classic example or classic cliche of, VC firms that are, investing in a bunch of companies and only one or two have to hit, and the others can all die by the wayside if it comes to it. As long as they get the big returns on some of them, then they've succeeded. And you kind of got then the PE mindset, which is like, well, actually, they've all got to kind of succeed a bit, and it's all about kind of, bringing up EBITDA and reducing costs and stuff like that. And they're going, I'm sure that there are, those are somewhat cliches and that there's a lot of complexity in and around. But how do you see the difference between being, CPO, interim or otherwise, at a sort of a strong PE-backed firm and a VC-backed firm, and like how does that change the role or the kind of what you're measured on?
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer that by starting with kind of a framing comment, which is I firmly believe that product managers need to be super commercially minded. And the reason I say that is because understanding the difference between a PE firm and a VC firm is fundamental to whether you'll be successful in that job if they're backed by one of those or not. And so the main difference here is that a PE firm actually owns outright or a majority stake in a firm, whereas a VC firm typically owns a small and not a minority stake in a firm. So there's usually a founder who still has a majority control. And so that changes things fundamentally, because in path A, PE firm, you're actually working for a financial institution ultimately, because that's the owner of the business. Path B, a VC firm, you're still working for a founder who's usually a product person. If it's a founding business and he's been there or she's been there since the beginning, they usually have some product or an engineering background. So that's quite different. Who's the boss here ultimately? Are you working for someone who's a bit like you, or are you working for someone who's probably not like you because they come from a finance background? So that's the biggest difference, and really kind of understanding that. And then the next layer down from that is, and then what do they expect from you? And this is the sort of commercial acumen piece. So if you're working at a PE firm, really they work on a cycle of 3 to 5 years. So they're investing and they expect to a return within 3 to 5 years, which means selling that business. And so you're immediately, that might change how you think about building products, right? Because your horizon
forget your 10-year plan, right?
Exactly. Your horizon is a lot more condensed. VC firms would have a longer expectation. As you say, they're kind of 1 in X will pay off is the mentality. So they're actually less involved in the day-to-day running of the business. And so you are building products, as your listeners and watchers will kind of recognize in the classical way there. You can use all the tools and tactics and frameworks that you would and that's okay. And an example there is doing discovery, right? That's okay in a VC world because it's a risk, it's a bet. We don't know. We need to validate, take some time. Let's just figure stuff out before we move into delivery. Now, that's anathema in PE back world, where it's don't like it's speed, build the thing, give me the return, give me certainty. Like anything that kind of slows you down from delivering the thing is not a popular choice. Um, Regardless, I'm not saying that's the right or wrong because I understand the pros and cons, but that's the mindset that you're working with, and so it creates quite a different culture. This is more delivery led on the PE side, like build, build, build as fast as possible um, for a definite point in time, which is an exit. And this one is about actually we still might need to find product market fit or pivot to something else or whatever it is. There's a lot more options, I'd say here. There's a lot more options for you, your career, your products, because everything's on the table. Whereas this PE is like, we've got a plan. It's usually called a value creation plan, and you have to get used to the language. It's quite a niche set of vernacular that comes with private equity. We've got a value creation plan, and this is what we deliver in this time frame. So we need to build it. It's quite a different mindset.
Do you think then, I mean, we talked about books earlier, that we talked exactly about what you've just mentioned there as well, just this idea that obviously, yes, it's different, the goals are different. Like, do you think then that the books that people always wave at people and read at people and authors go on podcasts and stuff, that they just represent something different to the reality that product leaders in a private equity owned firm would have? Like, or is there, I mean, I guess the question is there a slow and steady progress possible to get to the point where things are more like that? Or do you think that more like the books? Or do you think that actually they're never going to be like that because of those kind of competing goals and the time frames and just mentalities, and that PE product leaders just need to accept that it's a different game and adapt accordingly?
Yeah, I mean, I would say never say never. First of all, I've never read a book that is or watched or listened to anything that has really described what I've just gone through in the last year working in this private equity environment or the previous one. So I haven't read, and they're all tailored towards the other option, which is kind of traditional product and doing the best practice in the right way. So I haven't seen that, and maybe that's a niche. Maybe you should, one of your audience should start to do that because there are more and more private equity firms investing in more and more tech companies. So there is a demand, there will be a demand, and it's an unmet need at this point in time. So I think that's important. That content doesn't really exist today, and it's certainly. Yeah, I've painted a picture. I deliberately used kind of maybe more extreme language to kind of highlight the differences. But it's not like the people in the private equity firms aren't aware of the other option, and they just typically are making a choice to go down this path. So I think occasionally you come across an investment where maybe it does have a longer time horizon, or occasionally they have bought a smaller stake in a business, and so there's kind of different investors with a different mindset. But those are outliers, I think. So it's not always like I've described, but probably more often than not it is. And is that going to change in future? I would doubt it, not in the next few years at least, because this is a very popular investing model and it's working. So why change something that's working?
No, exactly. Just keep going and double down where you need to. Well, we'll keep an eye on it. Maybe someone listening to this can go and write that book as well. Don't think it'd be me. I don't think I'll be very good at writing books. All right, let's finish off with a few lightning questions then, just to kind of, give a bit more insight into you. And interesting one to always start, especially since we've talked a bit about books so far, is of all of the kind of product and tech books out there, which one would you consider to be your favorite?
Cool. That's a really good question, a hard question to answer. I'll probably answer it with a really product book. So I actually have a reading list, which I can share, which I give to all my teams when I join a business. But the one I probably most quote from is Drive by Dan Pink, which isn't necessarily a product book, but the three pieces, and you probably have that in your shelf.
Yes, I've got it
The,
here.
the three, the
Never read
three
it.
mantras from that book are autonomy, mastery, and purpose.
Most important trait in a product manager?
For me, it's about this commercial acumen, staying close to the money, because ultimately you're trying to build a product that serves both the users and the business. And the product managers in the mainly consumer companies I tend to work in really have to understand both the users and the business alike. And the further you are from the money, the harder it is for you to have an impact that's valuable. And so just really understanding how the business works, P&Ls and kind of balance sheets and things like that, as well as the specific areas of user experience you're working on and how that connects up to the kind of bigger picture and the financials of the business.
Best piece of career advice you've ever received?
Gosh, I mean, it's probably the same answer, is stay close to the money. The further you get,
Someone's been in private equity for too long, obviously.
The further you get from having a view on what the P&L of the business looks like, if you're not in the room when that's being discussed, then you're not able to make the most informed decisions about what the business and the users need. So stay close to where the kind of action is.
If you could have dinner with any famous figure, alive or dead, we'd bring them back to life. Who would it be and why?
Gosh, that is a really good question. I wish I'd prepared an answer for that one already.
I should have sent them beforehand, right?
Alive or dead? Yeah, I suppose. So I'm a historian, as in I studied history at university, and my dissertation was actually on code breaking during the Second World War. So I'd probably pick Alan Turing, who invented the computer, but it was originally about code breaking. And I think that would be fascinating.
Yeah, be interesting and see quite how wrong or right the imitation game got him, because I've heard differing reports as to the accuracy of his character. But obviously fundamental and foundational figure. And if you had to start your career over again from scratch, what would you do differently this time?
Yeah, I think previously I talked about having the book smarts and the street smarts. I didn't really appreciate that till sort of halfway through my career. And I probably stayed too much in the street smarts world and didn't spend enough time gathering the formal training. I was sort of figuring it out as I went. And then I went to a bigger company after several jobs, and I was probably playing catch up at that point. So I think the career advice I'd give is try and get formal training as early as possible, and then move into the startup world as quickly as possible after that. and then you can pick from either after that, because you'll be well equipped to handle either.
Oh, great advice. Well, final question, it's an important one. Why should great product people, maybe not quite yet, because obviously you've got your next little bit to go, but like as you start to expand out the team, why should great product people come and work for Winmau?
Well, I believe we are literally shaping a whole industry and a category, and it's very, very rare in your career that you get to do that. You get to define an industry, and it hasn't been defined. Digital darts is not a thing that most people know, and I intend to change that and make this product offering pervasive. So you get to change and define an industry, which is very, very rare.
Here, and that's something that we should all have ambitions to do. Well, where can people come and find you after this then, if they want to kind of catch up, connect, find out more about your own work or the company? Like, where can they come and do that?
Yeah, just connect with me on LinkedIn. So send me a message. Really keen to hear from people. If you're looking for whether it's coaching or advice or just a general chit chat, more than happy to get in touch and have a chat.
Absolutely. Well, I'll make sure to link it all into the show notes. Then, you never know, maybe a few people will come and, try and find out more, or, get the inside track on where to get their dart set up, so to speak.
Anyone who wants a game of darts, you know where to find me. Come on, ping me on LinkedIn and we can set up a game.
Yeah, well, I can guarantee it won't be me. I'm not very good at darts, and I can just about go round the clock if I try hard enough, but it takes a while. So I don't know. Maybe that's a 2026 goal for me. Get better at darts, and maybe Winmau will be the company that lets me do it. Well, like I say, I'll link that all into the show notes, and yeah, hopefully some people to come and find out a little bit more. But as for now, Nick, all I can do is thank you for sharing your CPO story.
Thanks, Jason. Great to be here.